Hey guys, it's Dani, and today we are back with week 6 and our 10-week intuitive eating series, and we are chatting all about pleasure and satisfaction. And I have to tell you that this is by far my favorite chapter in the book, and that's probably because this is one of my favorite topics to talk about. Now, if you are just joining us in this series, I would recommend going back and watching the first 5 videos. I will make sure to link to all of those down in the description box below. Each video kind of works together. All the different principles kind of dance with each other. So it's nice to kind of see how that flows. And of course, if you know anybody who you think would benefit from this series, please share this with them as well. Now, in the last video, we spoke about fullness and recognizing fullness and honoring fullness and using that as a guide to determine when you want to be finished with your meal. And at the end of that video, we spoke of a couple scenarios that might leave you still feeling like you want to eat food when you're not actually hungry anymore. And one of those scenarios was not feeling satisfied. When we don't receive the actual pleasure and nourishment that a meal has to offer, we end up feeling unsatisfied, and then we find ourselves wanting to eat more even though we're not really hungry. In Japan, they actually have the wisdom to include pleasure in their healthy eating guidelines, where I feel here in America, we are all in such a hurry to get healthy and thin that we totally overlook the pleasure principle and then miss out on one of the most basic gifts of existence, and that is allowing ourselves to feel satisfied and nourished from a meal. So many of us have come to see the eating experience as the enemy, so that we're so often just pushing against it, and we miss out on what is designed by nature to be one of life's greatest pleasures. We think that if we actually enjoy our food, we're going to trigger overeating. But remember, it is restriction and deprivation that triggers overeating. So it's literally the exact opposite, right? When you give yourself permission to eat food and enjoy your food, what kicks in are your natural self-limiting behaviors. So this is the opposite of what most of us think, and it is certainly the opposite of what we are constantly being told. When we settle for less with food, we end up hungry, wanting, craving, and overeating. When you take the time to eat something you really want with awareness in an inviting atmosphere, pleasure will be a very powerful force in helping you feel content and satisfied with your meal. Satisfaction in your meal now equals wanting less later. When you really take the time to eat what you want and enjoy it, you kind of reduce that desire to keep wanting to go back for more. You may also find that it takes less food to actually satisfy you, because not only are you being satisfied and nourished by the food, but you are being nourished by the entire eating experience. Now, this is straight from the Intuitive Eating book. Abraham Maslow, he is an American psychologist, has taught us that we are driven by our unmet needs. We want what we can't have, and we will do whatever it takes to calm down the sense of deprivation that inevitably arises when those needs are not satisfied. So fascinating, right? Whether it is food or relationship or a career, if we are not satisfied, we are not happy. So when it comes to eating, we really have to first give ourselves unconditional permission to eat what we want, really tune in and ask ourselves, what are we wanting in this very moment? And then eat that food with awareness and in an inviting environment, and really taste the food and chew the food and savor the food and be present so you can have true satisfaction from your meal. As humans, we are designed to move towards satisfaction and pleasure and to avoid pain. So being satisfied with a meal is really a very powerful experience. If you find yourself constantly eating around what you really want, or eating on the go, or not paying attention to your food, you're gonna feel unsatisfied, and you're gonna find yourself wanting more even if you're not hungry. When we're not present with a meal, we don't receive that nourishment and that satisfaction. The brain registers hungry. So how can we begin to work more pleasure and satisfaction into our meals? Well, the very first thing, like we've mentioned before, is to really check in with yourself before you eat, right? So you're giving yourself unconditional permission to eat what you want, and then you're saying, hey, what do you actually want? What would you love right now? What sounds good? What would you enjoy? What would give you a pleasurable eating experience? Notice, are you actually tuning into this moment, or is your mind somewhere in the past or somewhere in the future, right? Our minds are so busy about what we ate yesterday, what we should eat tomorrow. Are we having enough protein? Are we having enough fats and carbs that we literally miss the whole experience that's happening right now? So first, tune into the moment. Notice, what kind of flavor do you want? Do you want something sweet, salty, bitter, sour? What texture do you want? Do you want something creamy, crunchy, smooth, chewy? Do you want something that's hot? Do you want something that's cold? Do you want something that's room temperature? Really explore all the sensual aspects of food and tap into what you are truly wanting in that moment. Don't get caught up with that dieter's mentality of trying to eat around the foods that you really want. I mean, how many of us have been in a situation when we want a cookie and then instead we're trying to eat rice cakes with fat-free jelly on top to crave that sweet tooth? And what ends up happening is you eat one, you eat another, not satisfied. Then you might go for something else that's supposed to be a healthy food, right? And before you know it, you've eaten a ton more than you would have ever eaten if you just had the cookie, and you still eat the cookie when all is said and done anyhow, because we cannot out-trick the natural desires of the body. Studies actually show that artificial sweeteners trigger the body to eat more sugar and or to ingest more calories, right? So trying to trick ourselves is not the name of the game. Tuning into our desires and honoring ourselves is a much more pleasurable path, and one that will really make eating feel much more effortless. Another thing we want to do is eat slowly, eat with awareness, really taste your food, chew your food, put your fork down. I know I am kind of one of those people who can eat really fast by nature. And something that really helps me is to either play like a chewing game, like I'm going to chew each bite 20 or 25 times, and or to put my fork down in between bites. Or another game is try to be the last one done at the table. Just little external cues to help you tune in and practice slowing down with your meal. Another thing that will reduce the pleasure of a meal is getting too hungry or getting too full, right? So when you get super, super hungry, when you sit down to eat, we tend to eat fast, or we kind of trigger that feast or famine mode. We're no longer really enjoying the meal. We're kind of just getting the food in. And the same with when you start to get too full. If you start to get too full, you will notice that food does not taste as good when you're not actually hungry. Another tip to play with is eat in a pleasant environment, right? Maybe put the music on, light a candle, use your favorite dish or your favorite china. Make it feel like a special occasion. And I know that a lot of us, we can't do this at every single meal. Just know that you don't have to do it at every meal, but start to play with it when and where you can. A few other tips are to be social. Enjoying a beautiful meal with somebody else completely enhances the eating experience. And of course, to avoid tension at the table, right? Don't argue, don't get into a heavy, heated conversation when you're eating a meal, because that's gonna reduce the pleasure of the meal. Save that for another time of the day. Another tip would be to eat a variety of foods. Keep your kitchen stocked with foods you enjoy. Again, this is the polar opposite of what people tell us. You know, if you like ice cream, don't buy it and keep it in your house, right? Don't do that. But what I'm saying is do that. Like, do buy and keep on hand foods that you truly enjoy, right? Because ice cream is not going to be the only food you truly enjoy. There's tons of beautiful fresh produce, and there's so many ingredients that we enjoy. Really keep a variety on hand so that when you tap into what you're wanting, you have some options for yourself. Which brings me to the next point. If you don't love it, don't eat it. If you find yourself eating something and it's just not hitting the spot, you're not enjoying it, it's okay to stop and reassess. What would I rather have? What would I more enjoy right now, right? This is really a practice of honoring yourself, honoring your desires. It is kicking up the game of self-care, in my opinion, and that is not to be overlooked. It's super important. And then finally, as you're eating, check in with yourself. Ask yourself, does this still taste good? Am I still enjoying this? Like I mentioned before, when we start to fill up, when we start to have enough food, food actually starts to taste less enjoyable. So it's just a practice of noticing that. And the way we notice is simply by bringing awareness and checking in with ourselves. It's an ongoing practice. Knowing what you like and believing that you have the right to enjoy food are both key factors in sustainable health in weight loss. So do not overlook it. I'm telling you, this is super fun stuff to practice, finding ways to add more pleasure to your eating experience, and it is not to be underestimated. It is powerful. So I'm sure by now you can see why I love this topic so much. I mean, what's not fun about talking about pleasure and fun and satisfaction, and why those things are such key components to our health and our wellness and our weight loss journeys, right? We are always so driven by what we need to do and the push and the deprivation and what we need to take away. But really recognizing that flipping that switch to what we can add in and how we can slow down and what we can enjoy is a lot more of an effective and powerful approach. I'm really looking forward to next week, which is another really juicy topic, one of my favorites, which is honoring your feelings without using food. So make sure that you join me back here next Tuesday as we dive into that topic. Thank you guys so much for watching. I'm Dani Spies, and I will see you back here next week with some more food for thought. Cheers.